What's good, everybody? It's Mike Reed, and welcome to My Life Ministries, where leadership, influence, faith, and evolvement are the principles that we look to live by every single day of our life. And by us living those principles, it helps us to help you to become motivated young leaders that implement faith every day in their lives as well. Today, I'm going to be coming from First Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. And it says, and I'm going to be reading out of the NLT version, and it says, the temptation in your life are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will not allow the temptation to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, he will show you a way out so that you can endure. And when I was reading that, I just began to think about things that I've been tempted with in my life, and the temptations that I go through on a daily. And I just begin to think about it to the point to where, with our temptations that we face in our life, there's temptations are going to be there. Temptations are never going to leave. There's always going to be something that we are going to be tempted by. And in the middle of our temptation and what we are tempted by, it does not become the sin, because sin is not being tempted. Sin comes in when we allow the temptation and what we are tempted of to become action-based. And when we put action behind what we are tempted by, then that's when we begin to walk into a sinful mindset. And that's when we begin to act in a sinful way, and our behavior begins to change. So something that you most definitely have to understand is that just because you are being tempted, when you are being tempted does not mean that you are sinning against God, because God will always provide a way of escape when that temptation comes. And that's why we have to be suited up, and that's why we have to be 100% accurate with God, when it comes to these types of situations in our life, because these temptations are the things that want to push us away from who God is and push us to the point to where we go and we act on what we are thinking and what the enemy is tempting us by. Temptation is such a strong thing, that affects us, because we begin to ponder on what we are tempted by. We begin to overthink about what we are tempted by. And when we begin to think that way, it causes us to marinate, and it causes us to fix our mind on what it is, and it causes us to keep pressing towards what it is, because we're not allowing the Holy Spirit to help us eliminate that from our life. See, the Bible says that God will make a way of escape, but that way of escape is already made. But we have to make the choice to go ahead and follow that way that God has given us to move from it. But sometimes with our temptation, we like the thought of it. We like to play around with it. We like to let it linger. We like to allow ourselves to ponder on it. And the more that we ponder on that temptation, because we feel like we're not acting on it, the deeper that we are getting into acting on that temptation, the closer that we are getting to acting on that temptation. And that's the reason why we have to immediately eliminate that from our life. And once we eliminate that from our life, and we eliminate that from our mindset by following what God is telling us to do, by following the path that God is telling us, the path that God has given us, the escape plan that God has given us, it's extremely important that we understand that, because as men and women of God, we are going to be tempted. Just because we serve God does not mean that we are the ones who are placed over here in this different time frame, or placed over here in this different system, to the point to where we don't face the things that others face. No, we are going to deal with the same types of situations. But the thing about it is that we have a God that makes a way for us when we are tempted with those things. And we cannot allow the temptation that we face to get the best of us, because it all starts with your mind. And the more that you allow yourself to ponder on what you are being tempted by, the closer you're going to get to acting on it. The closer that you are going to get to acting on it, because God is never going to allow you to be tempted more than you can bear. He's never going to allow that to happen. But the only reason how he can allow that not to tempt you to the point to where it's driving you crazy is if you take that temptation that you're dealing with and you bring it to God and you let God know, like, hey, God, this is something that I'm going through. This is something that keeps wrecking my brain. This is something that keeps bothering me. God, I was feeling this way a little bit today. God, I need you to help me. And God will show up. He will show up and he will show out and he will give you the directions of the way that you need to go to escape from it. So you cannot allow the temptation to get the best of you, because walking with God, it's not meant to be an easy task. It's not meant to be an easy task, because if it was easy, then there would be no growth. It would be the most simplest way of walking with God, because it's just there's no challenge with it. But see, God, he takes us through these things in our life in order to build our strength. He takes us through these hardships in order to grow us. He takes us through these hardships in order to give us wisdom and to give us patience and to teach us kindness and to give us, to teach us humility. He takes us through these things. So just because you are being tempted by something, do not allow yourself to ponder on the temptation, because the more that you ponder, the more that the temptation grows. And you may do good today. You may even do good tomorrow with the temptation. But if you keep thinking about what you're being tempted by, the more that you go down the road, the more that you're going to fall into that. So whatever you do, do not allow temptation to get the best of you. Do not allow temptation to get the best of you. You have to understand what God is telling you. He's making a way of escape, because somebody is being tempted right now on an extreme level, and they're fighting and they're fighting and they're fighting to try to get away from it. But all you have to do is just say, Lord, I need you to help me remove this temptation from my life. And the moment that you call on God to help you with the temptation, that's when everything is going to begin to clear up, and he will make that way of escape. And then you learn from what he's telling you. You learn from what he's showing you in that moment, so that when the temptation comes back, you know exactly what it is that you need to do, because the enemy is going to come. He's going to come and try to tempt you. You're going to see things in the world that you used to do. You're going to see people engaging in things that you may want to engage in. Temptation, there's so many levels of being tempted. So many levels of being tempted. And that's the world that we live in. We live in the world, but we're set apart from the world. So don't let temptation ruin you. Don't let temptation drag you down. Don't let temptation take you to a place that you don't want to be, because you're this close from messing up. And the more that you sit back and you let temptation wreck your brain and you keep thinking about what you're being tempted on, eventually you're going to act. Because the stronger that the temptation is, the more that the devil can throw at you. He starts off with something small to tempt you. Then it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. That's why when you are tempted, right away, you have to cast that temptation down. And you have to trust in God no matter what. Because the temptation is what is going to cause you to be destroyed. And you don't want that to happen in your life. So trust God, keep moving in God. Do not allow the temptation to get the best of you, because God has already made a way of escape. And the way of escape, it comes through him. So trust in his direction and trust in his escape plan. You guys have a wonderful and a blessed day, and I'll talk to you soon.